Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We're going to get started very shortly. Give us another couple of seconds while a couple more people join. Great, and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for joining us today. We're expecting about 60 participants, but we're going to get started. And we're so glad that you can join us today. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded. All participants are muted, so please ask any questions you might have in the chat box, either during the presentation or during the Q&A, or raise your hand and we'll try and call on you as we go along. I'm Tom Gabrielle, the president and CEO of the United Way of Westchester and Putnam, and I'm joined today by my esteemed colleague, Katie Harris, AmeriCorps Vista, who is responsible for putting together this event, as well as the rest of our impact team. At the United Way, we believe we're stronger together, and that it is only by being united that we can change the world for the better. We recognize that 40% of our neighbors live in poverty or paycheck to paycheck. These are often hardworking families struggling to make ends meet and provide a better life for their children. And one of the ways our United Way works to break these cycles of systemic poverty and inequity is by supporting education, income, and health initiatives to help residents become more self-sufficient. That's why today, the United Way of Westchester and Putnam is working in collaboration with Hudson Valley Credit Union to present this informative financial wellness seminar, which will discuss the basics of budgeting, as well as provide tips for building emergency savings in case of unforeseen circumstances. Leading this webinar will be our friend at Hudson Valley Credit Union, John DeAngelis, who is the Community Relations Coordinator. John began his career at the credit union in 2018 as a marketing intern. And after graduating from the Fashion Institute of Technology with a bachelor's degree in marketing, he returned in February 2020. Great time to come back to work, John, as a full-time member of the marketing team. In his role, John assists with public and government relations, as well as community outreach and financial education initiatives, which include things like leading this seminar today. So without any further delay, I'm going to turn it over to John. The webinar is all yours.
Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you to everyone at the United Way of Westchester and Putnam for having me today. We are so grateful for this partnership and to be able to do this today. I think in the past year, we've really seen a true need for more financial education, especially when it comes to topics such as budgeting and emergency savings, just the way the pandemic has truly changed the way we look at our finances and the economy in general. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and we can get started. Okay, so today we're going to be covering two topics, building a budget and building an emergency savings fund. So first, just some food for thought. A budget is like a New Year's resolution. We all know it's designed to help us, and yet we have so much trouble sticking to it. Just like any other New Year's resolution, whether it's changing your eating habits or starting to going to the gym, whatever it may be, a budget, getting yourself in a budget and sticking to it is just as much of a habit as anything else might be. Just like a New Year's resolution, it's a habit. And in order to start a new habit, you also have to try to break old habits. So just like in starting to go to the gym and maybe change your diet, when it comes to a budget, you want to start to change your purchase habits and you want to change the way you save your money and what you spend your money on, all to be in better control of your finances and also just to have a better outlook on how to save for your financial goals in the future. So next, we're going to go over some common budgeting misconceptions. The first one is that having a budget means feeling guilty about spending your money on fun stuff. While this may seem true, the real truth is that having a budget means feeling confident about your money. A budget isn't designed to make you feel shame or guilty about doing the things that you enjoy. The purpose of a budget is so that you can still do the things you enjoy while also making sure that the things you absolutely have to pay for are being paid for, and also that you're saving for stuff in the future, different financial goals you might have, such as starting a family or buying your dream house or even planning for retirement. Another common misconception is budgets keep you stressed. And while a lot of people might feel this way, the truth is that budgets are designed to keep you safe. Budgets are designed to make you have full control over your finances and everything that you have to pay for on a month-to-month basis. It's designed to be kind of like a safe, your safety net. Here's what I can spend on my wants this month. Here's what I can spend on my needs this month. And you know that you can't necessarily go over a certain amount, or else you might find yourself in trouble. So it's never meant to keep you stressed. It's never meant to make you stressed out. It's meant to keep you safe and out of harm's way and falling into different financial troubles. So the first step in getting your budget started is calculating your income. And I always say that knowing your monthly net income is to be in total control of your financial future. And that's because when you figure out what your monthly net income is, you can start to plan not only your budget, but like I was saying before, different financial goals that you might have down the road. Planning for retirement, going for applying for a mortgage so you can purchase your dream house, getting buying your next dream car, whatever it may be. These are all different situations where knowing your monthly net income will really help you set the ground for understanding what you can and can't afford. So your monthly net income isn't to be confused with your monthly gross income. Your net income is everything that you take home after things such as your 401k, taxes, Social Security, healthcare are all deducted out of your paycheck. Your gross monthly income, on the other hand, is everything before those deductions are taken out of your paycheck. So for example, let's say that you're working a part-time job and you're working $15 an hour and one week you work 20 hours. So you may be thinking, okay, great. This week I'm going to be taking home $300. I can save a little bit and I can spend a little bit on going out to dinner with friends and put some towards my Netflix bill. The reality is that you're more likely going to be taking home about $210 that week after your taxes, your, if you have a 401k, that'll come out of your paycheck as well, health insurance. The reality is that is going to be that $210. A really good rule of thumb that I learned while I was in college is that when you're thinking about your gross salary, a good way to calculate or a good way to estimate your net salary or your net income is to take 30% out of that gross salary or gross income. That should give you a good idea of what you can expect to take home on a weekly, monthly, or yearly basis. So one of the most commonly used budgeting methods is known as the 50-30-20 model. And the 50-30-20 model takes your needs, wants, and savings and divides it into three different percentages, or in this case, three different categories: your needs, your wants, and your savings. So your first category is your needs. These are things that you absolutely have to pay for on just a basic, you can do it on a basic survival level. So food, water, shelter, clothing. Those are things you absolutely that you absolutely have to pay for. It can also be expanded to things such as your mortgage payment, any medical bills you might have, a car payment. These are payments that you know if you don't pay for can lead to serious financial trouble. Your wants, on the other hand, these are payments that you don't necessarily have to make, but you make them because it's something you enjoy doing. These are influenced by things such as your culture, your faith, your friends, your family, even your hobbies and your side passions. These are what you enjoy doing in your spare time. So for me, I'm someone who really loves going out to dinner with my friends. And although I don't need to go out to dinner, I can instead go out and buy my own groceries and make myself dinner. So going out to dinner, that's a want because it's you don't need to do that in order to eat. You can, go out and buy your own groceries. Your savings, on the other hand, this is any expenses related to debt repayment, or savings plans. So your savings account is really going to be, you know, what I like to think of as your goal, planning for your goals. So your goal could be debt repayment if you have a student loan or a car loan or your mortgage, whatever it may be. You can use your savings to pay that off. And you can also use that your savings account to plan for the future. If you're someone who's getting ready to start a family and you want to think about how much money do I need to put aside to cover medical costs, to cover clothing, food, diapers, whatever it may be, your savings is a really good, robust term to help you plan for the future. So from there, you can really break down each category into percentages. So for example, if your monthly net income is $3,000, you can divide your needs into 50%, or that turns out to be $1,500 of your monthly net income needs to be spent on your needs. Your wants, on the other hand, is going to receive 30%, or $900, and your savings, lastly, is going to receive 20%, or $600. The good thing about the 50-30-20 model, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the good thing is that you can really mold it into what works best for you. So you don't necessarily have to stick to 50-30-20. Depending on what your income situation is, you can rearrange it to be 30-50-20 or 20-50-30, however works for you. But like I said, we'll touch on that a little bit later. So another big part of budgeting is tracking and monitoring your spending. So we recommend that you track your spending for at least 2 months. And what I personally have done in the past is the first month, I'll purchase everything that I normally do. And at the end of that first month, I'll take a look at what I just spent and see, okay, where am I spending? Where am I making really good spending or purchase decisions? Where can I use improvement? That second month is where I try to make small changes, um, in my purchase decisions and really be conscious about what I'm purchasing. You can use any method that works best for you. I personally use an Excel spreadsheet because I think it really helps with the calculations that I have to do. If you have a lot of different um, payments or loans and you need to have everything in one spot, I think an Excel spreadsheet can really be convenient, but you can also use an app. There's plenty of free apps out in the App Store, but I will say that even though they're free, once you download them, some of them might have in-app purchases. So that's just something to keep in mind. And if you don't have access to a lot of digital technology, you can also just use a pen and paper and a calculator. So those are just some options. So like I was just saying, you want to take your first month and just purchase everything you normally do. And your second month, take that month to try to start to make those small changes. If you don't make those changes right away, that's okay. What matters is that you're trying to do it, and different things arise throughout the month. Not one month is ever the same as the other, as we know. So different situations may come up where you might have to pay for different things and spend a little bit more in each category. What matters is how you recover the next month. So for this example, you underspent a little bit in your needs goal by $200, but you overspent in your wants goal by $600. So the next time you go and plan for your budget, you might think, okay, what did I do in my wants um, that month? And how can I put more of that towards maybe my savings or maybe more towards my needs? So it's little changes like that that can really make all the difference. And again, don't be discouraged, because remember, this is about breaking habits, and it can be just as much of a struggle as breaking any other kind of habit. Another really important factor in budgeting is making it work, and making it work for you based on your lifestyle and the life that you live. So one tip is to reduce your spending, and this may seem really obvious, but for example, I really love Starbucks and I love their coffee and I go there too often, honestly. But what I've started to realize that I don't need to go out and get Starbucks every single day. I can find an alternative just by going to the grocery store, and I can get 1 liter of iced coffee and buy it and use it at home. So I can save that extra $5, which I can save that extra $5 from going to Starbucks, which the 2 liter of coffee from ShopRite or the grocery store costs just the same amount. So that's one small way that you can make a little change that will ultimately have a big impact on your finances and the way you save down the road. Also, increasing your income. And this is something that I've seen really come out of the pandemic. I've seen a lot of people online start to take their hobbies and make them into small side businesses. um, with being out of work, some people are trying to find new things to do and new things to accomplish, and they've actually turned what they would just consider a small hobby or a side passion, and they've made it into a full-blown business that's actually thriving. I've seen people go from, knitting sweaters for their parents or their friends into actually making a full-blown design boutique to say, to share with their entire community. People have also made candles and just artwork in general. Those are some of the really big um, businesses that I've seen come out of the pandemic and how people have thrived essentially. You also want to make sure that you modify your percentages. And I was talking about this earlier, but it's important to remember when setting up your budget that not everyone's income, obviously, not everyone's income is going to be the same. Everyone leads a different lifestyle. So don't compare yourself to other people because you don't know what their finances are. Base your budget on what works best for you and what works for your lifestyle. So, for example, if you're someone who is just getting out of college and you're coming back home, you're living with your parents for a while you look for a place of your own, you might not have to pay for things such as rent or the utilities. So you can take a little bit away from your needs and put more money towards your wants or even your savings. So in that case, it could be 20, 30, 50 or 20, 50, 30, whatever works best for you. Just remember that your budget is based on you and nobody else. It's based on your lifestyle and what you have to pay for, what you enjoy doing, and what you want to save for in the future. Also, just want to go over some best practices for every budget. So first, you want, like I was saying before, you want to find a way that works best for you. Like I was saying, I have an Excel spreadsheet that I use on a month-to-month basis, and this really helps me with the calculations. I think it's super convenient, but again, not everybody has access to digital technology and the internet. So if you want to go the pen and paper route, that's totally okay. Use what's most convenient for you and use what's most easily accessible for you. Make sure you keep it in a place that you'll remember where it is at the beginning and end of each month when you need to review your budget and make any changes you need to. Next, you want to base your budget income on your take-home pay. So like I was saying before, knowing your net income is being in total control of your financial future. You want to make sure that you understand what taxes and what other deductions are coming out of your paycheck because that's the final amount of money you're going to be taking home at the end of each week, month, or year, depending on, what you're planning for. I always think of your gross income as like your happy number. They're the one that you see first and you get a big smile on your face. Your net income, on the other hand, is the truth. It's the reality of what you're going to be taking home each month. And that might be a hard reality for some of us, but that's what you really have to base your budget on. And that's what's going to help you plan for the future and plan for the present too. You also want to take your savings seriously. You want to give your monthly savings contribution the same priority as all of your other living expenses. And this is because you don't know what can happen in the future. You don't know what new opportunities may arise. Um, you want to make sure you have enough money set aside for an emergency. You want to make sure that you have enough money set aside for debt repayment. You want to make sure that you have enough money set aside to reach your financial goals, owning a house, owning a new car, starting a family. Your savings deserves just as much as attention as your needs and your wants in the end. And this is something that I think often goes overlooked when it comes to budgeting, and that is checking your budget, not your balance. Your balance doesn't do as good of a job of telling you what you can and can't afford each month. So if you look at your balance one day, it might be really low. You might be scrambling to think, oh my God, what did I do? What did I pay for? If you look at your budget, you'll actually see that you've paid for everything you've needed to for that month. And you might actually have some room left to put in your savings or put in your wants, put towards your wants. So it's always better to check your budget first and make sure that you're still aligned with your goals and what you need to save for and what you need to pay for and where you can, splurge a little bit. And lastly, this is where we're going to segue into emergency funds. So you always want to make sure that you have an emergency fund on hand. Originally, when we made this presentation, we said to aim for 3 to 6 months of living expenses. But I think after experiencing the pandemic, the, the recommendation is that you should probably plan for at least 12 months of living expenses, things you absolutely need to pay for, your mortgage payment, your rent, your utilities, any medical bills you might have, things that are a necessity. You want to make sure you have enough money set aside to pay for these things to get you through whatever difficult time you're going through. So now we're going to segue into emergency funds, and we're going to start by looking at what is an emergency fund. So the academic definition is that it's an account that is used to set aside funds to be used in an emergency, such as the loss of a job, an illness, or a major expense. Our real world definition is that it's an easily accessible stash of money for use only in case of an emergency. So the first step is that you want to make sure that you can start one. Who should start one? Everyone. And why? Because you don't know what can happen. I don't think any of us at the end of 2019 saw a pandemic coming our way. And we surely, in our day-to-day lives, don't see any emergencies coming our way. They're often unpredictable, but when they hit, you want to make sure that you have enough money set aside to get you through that difficult situation. An emergency fund really will act as a cushion, and it'll be one less thing that you have to worry about when you're going through that difficult time, whatever it may be. You want to keep it close. You want to keep it handy, and you also want to keep it separate from the rest of your accounts. So personally, I keep a fund in a separate savings account, because if I'm keeping everything if I just have two accounts, let's say a checking and a savings, well, that savings account is going to be used for everything else I'm planning for, my financial goals, any bills that I have to pay for that month. You don't want to get your emergency savings intertwined with everything else that you have to pay for and everything else that you're planning to accomplish, because if you take money out of that savings account for an emergency, you're also taking money away from those other financial goals that you're planning for and other bills that you have to pay for that month. So that's really why it's best to just keep things separate. You also want to make sure that it's handy, like I said before. It's easily accessible, whether it's in an online banking account or you can go to a local ATM or a local branch and take money out directly from there. You just want to make sure it's in arm's reach, because emergencies happen fast and they can often, be really startling and might put a lot of pressure on you. So you just want to make sure that your finances are in reach. You also want to get to know your unknowns. So there are two types of unknown situations. There are unknown unknowns and there are known unknowns. Unknown unknowns are expenses that are truly unpredictable. We don't know when they'll happen, why they'll happen, or how they'll happen. We just know that they will happen at some point, but we just don't know when, how, or why. These are situations such as falling ill, if you have a medical emergency, or even getting into a car accident. Nobody ever predicts getting into a car accident. It can be completely random. You could even be stopped at a red light and then, unfortunately get rear-ended or something like that. Known unknowns, on the other hand, are expenses that are somewhat predictable. You don't know exactly when they'll happen, but you just know that it'll only be a matter of time. So a really good example of this is where you live and different natural disasters. So if you're someone who you just moved to Kansas and you have a nice farmhouse out on the open plains, you can expect that every spring and early summer is tornado season. So you want to make sure that you have the right insurance and the right funds set aside in order to pay for any damage that's done to your home, and also to make sure you have enough money to rebuild in the case that a tornado is really devastating and it wipes out your entire home or your community. You want to make sure you have enough money to set aside to pay for all the other expenses on top of it too: food, water, uh, relocating, whatever it may be. So the fourth step is you want to define what an emergency is. Emergencies come in a lot of different forms for every person. What I may be considering an emergency, someone else might not consider an immediate emergency. But whatever it is, it's any situation that threatens the amount of cash flow that's coming into your account. And that's when your emergency fund steps in. So some examples are being out of work for an extended period of time if the economy is really bad one month or for a certain part of the year and you're out of work. You want to make sure you have enough money set aside to get you through that difficult time and to keep paying for the things you absolutely need to pay for. Another example is needing to take care of a loved one. This is another good example of an unknown, that could be an unknown unknown, or what we also call an underestimated known unknown. Sometimes emergencies happen and you have to take care of someone that's close to you. And sometimes it may be predictable, or sometimes it might not be. Regardless of what it is, you want to make sure you have enough money set aside to not only help take care of that person, but to also make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And if you have a family, you can provide for them as well. And lastly, waiting for an insurance reimbursement. If someone passes away and you're going through the process of waiting for life insurance or whatever it may be, you want to make sure that you have enough time to get you through. Want to make sure you have enough funds set aside to get you through that difficult time, because sometimes with the court systems and the legal systems and everything else, it might take an additional or prolonged period of time for you to receive those funds. So you just want to make sure you're as prepared as possible. Next, you want to calculate your goal. So like the PowerPoint said, you want to plan for at least 6 months of living expenses. So for example, if your first monthly expense is $500, you want to make sure that your emergency fund size is at least $3,000. And the important thing to remember is that it doesn't have to be $3,000. When you set your emergency fund up, it doesn't have to be $3,000 from the start. Contribute a little bit each month and get yourself to that $3,000 mark. That could be a benchmark that you set up, and then from there once you reach that benchmark, you can increase it a little bit more to help you reach another goal even faster. Do what works best for you while also making sure that you're paying attention to your needs that you have to pay for in the present, and also your savings and your other wants as well. And the sixth step is making sure that you stick with it. So like I said, 6 months, and now what we recommend is 12 months. That can be a little intimidating for someone. But like I was also saying before, you want to make sure that you're setting benchmarks for yourself. Don't be afraid to set a goal. If your final goal is $3,000, you can set a goal saying, okay, I'm going to my halfway mark, um, or whatever it may be. I want to have at least $1,500 of my $3,000 goal set by a certain date. Do your best to put that money in there and do your best to get your fund set up. So once you reach that goal, you can increase it a little bit more and more, and that'll put you more towards your $3,000 goal. Going off of that, a healthy emergency fund takes a long time to build. Like I was saying, it's not going to happen right away, but be sure to take the time to really give it the attention that it needs, because like I was saying before during the budgeting section, it is technically a savings account, and you want to make sure that your savings are getting just as much attention as your wants and your needs, because you don't know when different emergencies will arise. You don't know how they'll happen, or you don't know when they'll happen. So you just have to be patient and keep reaching for your goal. Once you reach that goal, you can reward yourself by increasing the amount a little bit more each month. Okay, so that is budgeting and planning for emergency savings. And if there's a topic, I think I might have spoken a little too fast at certain points. So if anybody wanted to, go back to a certain point, I'm happy to go over another section in more detail. Or if anybody has questions, absolutely put them in the chat.
So John, there's a question in the chat. It says, could I put my emergency savings in some sort of investment plan? Or is that too slow to retrieve or not safe enough?
So I personally, well, it depends on what you define as an investment plan. I personally would avoid putting your emergency savings in anything that can be penalized if you take money out of it, like a 401k or a certificate account or an IRA or something like that. You'll get taxed if you take that money out of there. It's best if you can do something such as a money market account. You can follow the regulations and you can take money out of that account up to 6 times a month, or you can just use a standard savings account. At the credit union, for example, it only costs a penny to open up a savings account, and you can create as many as you want to, all for different things. So I would personally stick away or stay away from anything that will get you penalized if you take money out. Definitely go more towards a money market or just a standard savings account.
John, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
When you talk about budgeting, you discuss generally allocating 20% of income to savings, which included debt repayment. Should people be trying to save while they pay off debt? And do you have any tips for allocating between savings and paying off debt when doing them both simultaneously?
I think definitely the way I do it. So I have student loans, for example, and I'm also saving for different financial goals in the future. One of them actually being going back to school. I like to keep 2 separate accounts, one for my student loans and one for my financial goals in the future. So it is possible to save it is possible to save for the future and also um, pay back your debt. I will say that it depends on if that debt is also a need. So if you have a loan out for a mortgage and you owe money on it, then you should probably prioritize that mortgage more than say, you know, saving up for my next, dream car. If your car works fine already, that's just a future goal. Definitely prioritize that mortgage first. So it definitely depends on what your need is in that moment, and also, having a separate account to pay back debt and also having a separate account to plan for your future goals.
There's another question. Do you have any advice for converting the wants percentage into the savings percentage?
That's a good question. That kind of goes back to what I was saying before, the Starbucks example. You have to take a good look at what you're spending each month and really think about, is there a way that I can minimize my spending in this or category for wants, for example. So with Starbucks, I'm going to Starbucks 3 or 4 times a week, to be completely honest. But I know that Starbucks costs about anywhere from $4 to $5. A simple change that I can make is just buying my iced coffee in a 2-liter from the grocery store, and it's going to cost the same, if not cheaper. So that's just a really simple way that you can convert your wants into a savings. It may seem like a really small change, but the more you do it and going down the road, you'll be able to save a lot more in the future for different financial goals that you might have.
I think that's it. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. Anyone else have any other questions? No? John, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I was going to say, if anybody has questions about like jobs or going back to school. I just graduated in 2019. If anybody has questions related to that, not necessarily related to budgeting, or how budgeting can tie into that, I'm happy to answer those questions as well, or any advice, whatever it may be. I think just in general, one of the most important things to remember is that, and when it comes to budgeting, you really have to base it off of your lifestyle and what you enjoy doing and what you need to pay for. Like I was saying before, not everybody is going to have the same amount of, obviously not everybody has the same amount of income, and everybody leads a very different life. So the good thing about the 50-30-20 model is that you can really mold it into what works best for you. So if you need to do 30, 50, 20, or however you want to do it, you can do that. If you're someone who is, if you're a teenager and you're still living at home, you don't have to pay for things like rent or the utilities, or maybe not even groceries. You can put more towards your wants and your savings. If you're someone who is more on the independent side and you're working a full-time job, you have to prioritize those needs and also saving for the future, whether it's a financial goal or saving for an emergency, but also making sure that you take the time to give yourself. You want to make sure that you're also giving yourself enough funds for your wants too, to indulge in those things.
Great. Well, wait, I think there was one other question that came in. How should we incorporate saving money from the emergency fund through the 50-30-20 model?
So that's a good question. So the emergency fund will fall into your savings category. And so I'm trying to think of the best way to word this. I think just making sure that you have a separate account is definitely the best way to go, and making sure that you're putting enough money each side. You're putting in enough money each month into your savings. You can divide that amount of money. So let's say if you need to put $200 into a savings account each month, and that's the final amount, you can put $100 towards saving for your next financial goal, or you can put $100 towards saving for an emergency and going towards that emergency fund goal size. So that's just one way.
John, we also had a question, if you could repeat the 50-30-20 model, specifically what each bucket is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll pull the presentation back up. So the 50-30-20 model is a model that breaks down your budgeting system into 3 different categories. And let me just share the screen really quick. So it breaks it down into 3 different categories: your needs, your wants, and your savings. Why is this not going? There we go. Your needs, your wants, and your savings. Your needs are these essential expenses, so food, clothing, shelter, also things that we know we have to pay for, that if we don't, we could end up in some financial trouble. So such as paying your credit card bill, or your mortgage, your rent, your utilities. Those are all essential payments that you have to make each month. Your wants, on your other hand, these are things that you don't necessarily need to pay for, but you enjoy, something that you enjoy doing on a month-to-month basis. These are things that are influenced by your friends, your family, your culture, going out to dinner, going on a vacation, going to a concert, seeing a movie. You don't need to do those things, but you enjoy doing it because it's part of your lifestyle, and it could be a hobby too. Your savings, on the other hand, these are any expenses that are directly related to debt repayment or just a savings plan in general. So putting money towards going back to school or starting a family, while also making sure that you can pay back a car loan, a mortgage, things like that. And each category is broken down into different percentages. So the needs category will standardly, and this is all on a standard model, will generally receive 50% of your monthly net income. Your savings, or your wants, on the other hand, will receive 30% of your monthly net income. And your savings, lastly, will receive 20% of your monthly net income. So the example that I provided for us was, if your monthly net income is $300 or $3,000, you'll be taking home, or you'll be putting at least $1,500 towards your needs, or 50%, 30% or $900 towards your wants, and 20% or $600 towards your savings. So it's a pretty universal model that's used for budgeting. And like I said, it's really something that can be molded into what works best for you based on your lifestyle and what you need to pay for on a month-to-month basis.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think that was the last question in the chat. So I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope this was informative and helpful. I also want to thank our friend and partner, John DeAngelis at Hudson Valley Credit Union, for being a part of this event, for leading the webinar, and for teaching us all so much. I appreciate it. This is one of the reasons why I make my own coffee at home. So thank you again, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Tom.